"My child," he said, his words like a soothing balm to Adoma's weary spirit, "I hear your cries for help, and I am here to offer you salvation. But the path to deliverance is not an easy one. It requires sacrifice, faith, and unwavering devotion." Adoma nodded, her eyes fixed upon him with a mixture of reverence and desperation. "Tonight," he said, his voice low and filled with a strange intensity, "I will commune with the spirits on your behalf. But first, you must prove your faith to me. You must show me that you are willing to do whatever it takes to receive the blessings of the divine." And then, as if sensing her hesitation, Pastor Emmanuel leaned in closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Meet me tonight," he whispered, his words like a siren's call, "and together, we will seek the favor of the gods. But you must come alone, and you must come willing." Once upon a time, in the heart of a small African village, nestled amidst fields of swaying crops and under the vast expanse of the azure sky, lived Adoma and Paul. Adoma, a woman of grace and resilience at 36, was the backbone of her family. Her days were spent caring for her husband, Paul, a hardworking farmer, and their 5 lively children. Their life was simple yet filled with warmth and laughter. Each morning, the golden rays of the sun would dance through the windows of their modest home, painting the walls with hues of hope. Adoma would rise with the dawn, her hands skilled in the art of nurturing both crops and kin. Paul would set out into the fields, his calloused hands tilling the earth with a devotion born of generations. Their children, a chorus of joy and mischief, would scamper about, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves and the songs of birds. Together, they formed a beautiful picture of love, created with the threads of togetherness and shared dreams. But fate, with its capricious hand, chose an unexpected turn. One fateful morning, Paul fell ill. His once robust frame grew frail, his laughter replaced by the hollow echo of pain. Adoma, with a heart heavy with worry, tended to him with unwavering dedication, her hands cool against his fevered brow. As days turned into weeks, their little savings dwindled, spent on medicines and healers whose promises were as fleeting as the morning mist. With each passing day, the specter of uncertainty loomed larger, casting a shadow over their once serene existence. Then came the darkest night of all. Armed robbers, their faces masked by shadows and hearts hardened by greed, descended upon their home like vultures upon a wounded prey. They demanded money, their voices sharp with menace, their eyes gleaming with a hunger born of desperation. Adoma, her heart pounding with fear, searched frantically for any coin or trinket that might appease their assailants. But the illness that had claimed Paul had also claimed their savings, leaving only the hollow echoes of despair in its wake. In a cruel twist of fate, their pleas fell upon deaf ears. With a cruel laugh, the robbers set their home on fire, the flames licking hungrily at the walls that had once been their sanctuary. Adoma, clutching her children to her breast, watched helplessly as their dreams turned to ashes before her eyes. But the cruelty of fate did not end there. As the embers of their home smoldered into darkness, a new shadow descended upon their lives. Their youngest son, once vibrant and full of life, now lay pale and listless, his eyes haunted by a sickness that defied all reason. And so, as the first light of dawn painted the horizon with hues of crimson and gold, Adoma stood amidst the ruins of her home, her heart heavy with grief and her spirit battered but unbroken. For in the depths of her despair, she vowed to rise, like the phoenix from the ashes, and reclaim that which had been taken from her. Our wonderful people, share this video with friends and family. Help us to grow our channel. With the promise of hope burning bright in her heart, Adoma knew that she could not delay. The urgency of her family's plight weighed heavily upon her, driving her to action. And so, with a resolve born of desperation, she turned to her steadfast friend, Mariama, and laid bare her plan. "Come with me," Adoma implored, her eyes alight with determination. "We must seek out this man of God who can save my family." Mariama, ever the beacon of strength and compassion, nodded in silent agreement. She understood the gravity of Adoma's plight, and her unwavering support was a balm to Adoma's weary soul. Together, they laid out their plans with meticulous care. The journey to the neighboring village where the man of God resided was no small undertaking. It would require careful preparation and steely resolve. "We leave at first light on Sunday morning," Adoma declared, her voice firm with conviction. "The road may be long and arduous, but we will not falter. My family's salvation depends on it." Mariama nodded in solemn agreement, her eyes reflecting the same unwavering determination that burned within Adoma's heart. With each passing moment, their anticipation grew, fueled by the prospect of what lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the night sky stretched out in a blanket of stars, Adoma and Mariama made their final preparations. Their hearts beat as one, united in purpose and fortified by the bond of friendship that had carried them through countless trials before. And as they settled into an uneasy sleep, their dreams were filled with visions of the journey that lay ahead. For tomorrow, as the first light of dawn painted the world in hues of gold and rose, they would set out on a quest that would test the limits of their faith and endurance. The journey to salvation had begun. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Adoma and Mariama set out on their journey. The air was cool and crisp, carrying with it the promise of a new day and the hope of salvation for Adoma's family. Their path wound through fields of swaying grass and beneath the canopy of ancient trees, each step bringing them closer to their destination. The journey was long and arduous, but Adoma's resolve remained unshaken, fueled by the unwavering belief that the man of God held the key to her family's salvation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of travel, they arrived at the outskirts of the neighboring village. The church, a humble structure of weathered wood and crumbling stone, stood at the heart of the village like a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. As they approached, the sound of hymns drifted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of incense and the murmur of prayers. Adoma's heart quickened with anticipation, her steps quickening as she and Mariama made their way towards the sanctuary. And there, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, stood the man of God. Tall and imposing, with eyes that sparkled with a wisdom born of years spent in communion with the divine, he exuded an aura of authority and grace. His name was Pastor Emmanuel, a man revered throughout the land for his miraculous deeds and his unwavering faith. Countless tales were whispered in hushed tones of the blind who had regained their sight, the lame who had walked again, and the sick who had been healed by his touch. As Adoma and Mariama approached, Pastor Emmanuel turned towards them, his gaze piercing through the veil of their doubts and fears. In that moment, Adoma knew with a certainty that transcended reason, this man held the power to change her family's destiny. As Adoma stood before Pastor Emmanuel, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation, she poured out her soul to him. She spoke of her husband's illness, of the tragedy that had befallen their home, and of the mysterious sickness that now threatened to claim their younger son. With each word that fell from her lips, Pastor Emmanuel listened intently, his gaze unwavering, his expression unreadable. And when she had finished, he spoke, his voice soft but imbued with a steely resolve. "My child," he said, his words like a soothing balm to Adoma's weary spirit, "I hear your cries for help, and I am here to offer you salvation. But the path to deliverance is not an easy one. It requires sacrifice, faith, and unwavering devotion. Adoma nodded, her eyes fixed upon him with a mixture of reverence and desperation. She was willing to do whatever it took to save her family, to lift them out of the darkness that threatened to consume them. And then, with a gentle smile that sent shivers down her spine, Pastor Emmanuel spoke words that would forever change the course of Adoma's life. "Tonight," he said, his voice low and filled with a strange intensity, "I will commune with the spirits on your behalf. But first, you must prove your faith to me. You must show me that you are willing to do whatever it takes to receive the blessings of the divine." Adoma's heart faltered at his words, her mind swirling with confusion and doubt. What could he possibly ask of her that she had not already been willing to give? And then, as if sensing her hesitation, Pastor Emmanuel leaned in closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Meet me tonight," he whispered, his words like a siren's call, "and together, we will seek the favor of the gods. But you must come alone, and you must come willing." Adoma's mind reeled at his proposition, her heart torn between the desperate need for deliverance and the instinctive revulsion at the thought of betraying her vows. But in the end, it was the desperate hope for her family's salvation that won out. With a heavy heart and a soul weighed down by guilt, Adoma nodded her reluctant agreement. She would do whatever it took to save her family, even if it meant sacrificing her own dignity and honor in the process. As the moon hung high in the night sky, casting its ethereal glow upon the earth below, Adoma found herself alone in the darkness. Her footsteps echoed hollowly against the deserted streets as she made her way home, her heart heavy with the weight of the secret she bore. With each passing moment, the truth of what had transpired with Pastor Emmanuel gnawed at her conscience like a ravenous beast. The memory of their encounter lingered like a stain upon her soul, filling her with a sense of shame and regret that seemed to suffocate her with each breath. And then, like a bolt from the blue, came the realization that would shake her to her very core. As she sat alone in the silence of her home, her hands trembling as she clutched the result of a pregnancy test, Adoma knew with a sickening certainty that her world would never be the same again. The knowledge that she carried Pastor Emmanuel's child filled her with a profound sense of despair. The guilt of betraying her husband, the shame of succumbing to the manipulations of a man she had once revered, and the fear of the consequences that awaited her weighed heavily upon her fractured spirit. For Adoma knew all too well the harsh judgment that awaited a woman who bore the mark of sin upon her flesh. In a society where honor and virtue were prized above all else, her transgression would be met with scorn and condemnation, casting a shadow upon her family and staining their name for generations to come. And yet, amidst the darkness that threatened to engulf her, a flicker of hope remained. For in the depths of her despair, Adoma knew that she could not surrender to the tide of shame and regret that threatened to consume her. She must find the strength to face the consequences of her actions, to seek redemption for the sins she had committed, and to forge a path towards a future where her family's honor could be restored. But as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, illuminating the world with its gentle glow, Adoma knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and hardships. For the aftermath of her fateful encounter with Pastor Emmanuel would test her resolve like never before, pushing her to the brink of despair and forcing her to confront the darkest corners of her soul. The air in their humble home felt heavy with the weight of unspoken words as Adoma sat across from her husband, Paul. Her heart raced with each passing moment, her hands trembling as she clutched tightly to the threadbare fabric of her skirt. The time had come for her to confess, to lay bare the truth that had festered like a wound in the depths of her soul. "Paul," she began, her voice barely more than a whisper, "There's something I need to tell you." Paul looked up from his work, his brow furrowed in confusion at the solemn tone of her voice. But as he met her gaze, his eyes softened with concern, sensing the gravity of her words. "What is it, my love?" he asked, his voice gentle but tinged with apprehension. And then, with a trembling breath, Adoma spoke the words that would shatter their world. I had an affair," she confessed, her voice thick with shame and regret. "With Pastor Emmanuel." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the ragged sound of Adoma's breath and the pounding of her heart in her chest. She watched as the color drained from Paul's face, his eyes widening in shock and disbelief at her revelation. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of Adoma's confession hanging heavy in the air like a thick fog. And then, with a voice choked with emotion, Paul spoke. "How could you?" he whispered, his words a painful lament that echoed through the room like a funeral dirge. "How could you betray me in such a way?" Tears welled in Adoma's eyes as she met her husband's gaze, her heart breaking at the hurt and betrayal she saw reflected in his eyes. She reached out to him, her hand trembling as she sought solace in his embrace, but he pulled away, his expression a mask of anguish and disbelief. Their marriage, once a beacon of love and trust, now lay in ruins at their feet, shattered by the weight of Adoma's infidelity. And as they stood on the precipice of a chasm that seemed to stretch out before them into eternity, they knew that the road ahead would be fraught with pain and sorrow, their love tested like never before by the devastating consequences of Adoma's betrayal.